Claimed by the billionaire. The eviction notice trembled in Sarah Mitchell's hands as she stood in the doorway of her small apartment in Queens, New York. 24 hours. That's all she had left before losing the only home her 6-year-old daughter Emma had ever known. "Mummy, why are you crying?" Emma tugged at Sarah's worn jeans, her big brown eyes filled with concern. Sarah quickly wiped her tears and forced a smile. "Just dust in my eyes, sweetheart. Go finish your cereal." But it wasn't dust. It was 3 years of struggling as a single mother, working double shifts at the diner and still falling behind on rent. Ever since the accident that took her husband Jake's life, everything had crumbled. The fishing boat he worked on had capsized during a storm off the coast of Maine. No survivors, they said. No bodies recovered. Her phone buzzed with yet another bill collector's message. Sarah ignored it and grabbed her coat. She had to get to work, even though Mr. Peterson at the diner had been making noises about cutting her hours. "Mrs. Chen will pick you up from school today, okay?" Sarah kissed Emma's forehead, inhaling the sweet scent of her daughter's shampoo. If they lost the apartment, where would they go? The subway ride to Manhattan felt longer than usual. Sarah stared at her reflection in the dark window, seeing a 28-year-old woman who looked 40. Dark circles under green eyes, auburn hair that needed a proper cut, clothes that had seen better days. She barely recognized herself. At Romano's diner on the Upper East Side, Sarah tied her apron and started the morning routine. The breakfast crowd was typical. Construction workers grabbing coffee, office employees rushing to their high-rise buildings, and the occasional well-dressed businessman who seemed to own the world. "Sarah, table 12, called Marco, the head waiter, nodding toward a corner booth. She approached with her notepad ready, but when the man looked up, her world tilted off its axis. The coffee pot slipped from her numb fingers, shattering on the floor in a cascade of brown liquid and ceramic shards. "Jake?" The word escaped as barely a whisper. The man had Jake's face, older, more angular, with a scar running from his left temple to his jaw. His dark hair was shorter, more expensive looking. Instead of Jake's flannel shirts and work boots, he wore a tailored navy suit that probably cost more than Sarah made in 6 months. "Hello, Sarah." His voice was Jake's voice, but colder, controlled. "You're dead." Sarah's legs threatened to give out. "The boat. The storm. They never found." "Sit down." It wasn't a request. Marco appeared with a mop, shooting concerned glances at Sarah. "Everything okay here?" "Give us a minute," the man who looked like Jake said, sliding a $100 bill across the table. Marco's eyes widened, and he quickly made himself scarce. Sarah slumped into the opposite seat, her heart hammering. "You're supposed to be dead." Jacob Mitchell died in that storm. His blue eyes, Jake's eyes, were ice cold. "I'm Alexander Steele now." The name hit her like a physical blow. Alexander Steele, the tech billionaire whose face graced magazine covers, whose company had revolutionized renewable energy. She'd seen him on the news just last week, announcing another billion-dollar acquisition. "That's impossible." Sarah's voice cracked. "You're my husband, Emma's father. You loved us." Something flickered across his features, so brief she almost missed it. "That life is over." "What happened to you?" Tears streamed down her face. "Where have you been for 3 years? Do you have any idea what we've been through?" Alexander, she couldn't think of him as Jake anymore, pulled out a tablet and slid it across the table. On the screen was a legal document, her apartment building, her building. "I own everything now, Sarah, your building, the diner where you work, the school Emma attends." His voice was matter-of-fact, businesslike. "You have 24 hours to vacate." "You're the landlord?" The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. "You're the one who's been raising our rent, making our lives hell." "I'm a businessman, nothing personal." "Nothing personal?" Sarah's voice rose, earning stares from other customers. "I'm your wife. Emma is your daughter." "I have no wife, no daughter." Alexander stood, straightening his suit jacket. "The papers will be served this afternoon. I suggest you don't make this more difficult than necessary." He walked away, leaving Sarah sitting among the coffee-stained remains of her old life. That afternoon, Sarah sat in the small law office of Elena Rodriguez, a legal aid attorney she'd found through a community center referral. Elena was young, idealistic, and honest about their chances. "I'm sorry, Sarah, but legally you have no recourse. He owns the building. If you can't pay the back rent, you have to leave." "But he's my husband," Sarah insisted. "We were never divorced. Can you prove that? Do you have a marriage certificate, joint bank accounts, anything that establishes your legal relationship to Alexander Steele?" Sarah's heart sank. All their documents had been in Jake's name, Jacob Mitchell, a man who, according to official records, had died 3 years ago. There has to be something. Eleanor's expression softened. "There might be. If you can prove he's the same person, prove fraud. But it would take time and money you don't have." That evening, Sarah sat on Emma's bed, watching her daughter sleep. How could she explain that the father Emma barely remembered had returned as a stranger who wanted to destroy their lives? A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Mrs. Chen, their elderly neighbor, peered around the doorframe. "Sarah, dear, there's a man at the door. Says he needs to speak with you." Sarah found Alexander waiting in her tiny living room, looking absurdly out of place among her second-hand furniture and Emma's scattered toys. "What do you want now?" she asked wearily. "I have a proposition." He picked up one of Emma's drawings, a family picture with stick figures labeled Mommy and Me and Daddy in Heaven. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I'm listening. Work for me. My housekeeper just quit. The job comes with accommodation, a small apartment above my garage in the Hamptons. Why would you help us?" "I'm not helping. I need domestic staff. You need employment. It's purely transactional." Sarah studied his face, searching for any trace of the man she'd married. "And if I refuse? Then you and your daughter are homeless tomorrow." The next morning, Sarah found herself driving a U-Haul truck toward the Hamptons, Emma chattering excitedly beside her about their adventure. They'd packed everything they owned in 2 hours. Alexander's estate was breathtaking, a modern glass and steel house overlooking the ocean, surrounded by manicured gardens. The staff quarters were a small but comfortable apartment with ocean views. "It's like a castle, Mommy!" Emma ran to the window, pressing her nose against the glass. "Remember, sweetheart, this is temporary," Sarah said, though she wondered if anything in their lives would ever be permanent again. Alexander appeared in the doorway, having traded his suit for jeans and a white shirt that made him look dangerously like the Jake she remembered. "The main house is off limits except when you're working," he said. "Breakfast at 7, dinner at 6. Keep the child quiet." "Her name is Emma," Sarah snapped. "And she's your—" "The child," he repeated firmly, then left. Over the next few weeks, Sarah fell into a routine. She cooked Alexander's meals, maintained his house, and tried to shield Emma from the tension that crackled whenever they were in the same room. But late at night, she sometimes caught him standing on his deck, staring out at the ocean with an expression of such profound sadness that her heart ached. Those were the moments he looked most like Jake. Emma, with a child's resilience, adapted quickly. She made friends at the local school and seemed fascinated by their mysterious benefactor. "Why doesn't the nice man ever smile?" she asked one evening. "Some people have forgotten how," Sarah replied, tucking her daughter into bed. "Maybe we can help him remember." The breakthrough came 3 weeks later. Sarah was preparing dinner when she heard Emma's laughter from the garden, followed by a deeper sound she hadn't heard in years, Alexander laughing. She found them by the pool. Emma was showing him how to make dandelion chains, her small hands guiding his larger ones. "Like this, see? Mommy taught me. Daddy used to make them too before he went to heaven." Alexander's hands stilled. "Your daddy made these?" "Uh-huh. He said they were crowns for his princess." Emma placed the completed chain on Alexander's head. "Now you're a prince." Sarah watched from the doorway as something cracked in Alexander's carefully maintained facade. His eyes filled with tears he fought to control. "Emma, sweetheart, come inside," Sarah called softly. "But Mummy, the prince looks sad." Sometimes princes need to be alone when they're sad. That night, Sarah found Alexander sitting on the beach, still wearing Emma's dandelion crown. She approached cautiously. "She doesn't know," she said, settling beside him on the sand. "Good. Jake." She tested the name carefully. "What happened to you?" For a long moment she thought he wouldn't answer, then quietly, "I remember the boat going down. The water was so cold. I thought about you and Emma as I went under." His voice broke slightly. "The next thing I knew, I was in a hospital in Boston. Different face, different name on my chart. They said I'd been in a coma for months. No memory of how I got there. Why didn't you come home?" "I tried. I came to our old apartment, but you were gone. The neighbors said Sarah Mitchell had moved away after her husband died. I had no identification, no way to prove who I was. And this face." He touched his scar. "I didn't look like Jake anymore." "So you became Alexander Steele?" "I had skills, engineering, business sense I'd never used. I built something from nothing, became powerful enough that no one could ever hurt the people I loved again." His laugh was bitter. "Except I became the one hurting them." "Why?" The question came out as a whisper. "Because I watched from a distance for 2 years, saw you struggling, barely surviving, and I couldn't figure out how to come back without destroying the life you'd built. Jacob Mitchell was dead. Sarah Mitchell was a widow with a daughter. How do I explain that I'm actually a billionaire with a different face? So instead, you tortured us. I thought if I made your situation desperate enough, you'd accept help, but not from Jake, from someone who could actually protect you." Sarah stared at him. "That's the stupidest plan I've ever heard." "Yeah," he managed a weak smile. "I'm apparently better at making money than making sense. Emma needs her father. Emma needs stability, security, things Jacob Mitchell could never provide. She needs love, Jake. That's what you gave her before. That's what Alexander Steele could give her now, if he stopped being such an idiot." They sat in silence, listening to the waves. Finally, Alexander spoke. "I don't know how to be him anymore. Jake was simple. He fixed boats and made dandelion crowns and thought love was enough." "Love is enough," Sarah said firmly. "Everything else is just details. What if I can't do this? What if I'm too different now? Then we'll figure it out together. That's what families do." The next morning, Emma found a dandelion crown waiting on her breakfast plate, along with a note. "For my princess. Love, Daddy." Alexander emerged from the kitchen, nervous but smiling. "I thought maybe we could try again. All of us, if you'll have me." Emma launched herself into his arms with a squeal of delight. "I knew you weren't really in heaven. I told Mommy you'd come back." Over Alexander's shoulder, Sarah saw tears streaming down his face, the first real emotion she'd seen from him since his return. "Welcome home, Jake," she whispered. "Welcome home, Alexander," she corrected, smiling. "Jake and Alexander, you're both of them now." He held his family close, finally understanding that the man who could make billions and the man who made dandelion crowns weren't different people at all. They were just different parts of the same heart, a heart that had always belonged to them. The ocean breeze carried the scent of salt and new beginnings as they stood together, no longer strangers, no longer apart. They were home.